Okay, Rob, we'll start with you.
Hi, Rob Trotta, and I am the project director for New England Aquaventus.
Okay, great, thanks.
Allison Troy, Eastwood Bay resident. Hi, Debbie Braun Bigelow and Barters Island resident. Dana Wilson, so many things, but Eastwood Bay resident and a butter. Allison Evans, Eastwood Bay Harbor resident.
And Nell Tharp, Eastwood Bay resident. So, is there any questions, because Rob has to leave early, are there any questions that we have for Rob specifically, or anything that you want to share, Rob, before you have to go?
Well, I think there were. I took away three pieces. I think that from our last from the last meeting. The first one was that you did want for there it goes again. The first one is that you did request that if we could utilize our outreach people to take a look at the postcard that's be looking for feedback, and also that we would take a look at again just for suggestions or for the survey. And then the third piece that I took away with that we had a dialogue at the end of last meeting was, would the project support financially or otherwise a website in which to be, as I was explaining, the depository for things like the matrix, or any other supporting information from the survey. So you all have, sorry, I was trying to move it faster, but I can only move the machine so fast. But you do have a draft of a mock-up of the postcard for consideration. Again, this is only for your, if there's, oh, there you go. So there's still some missing pieces like the QR code and the website address, right? So there's still a couple of things that are required for it, but this was a recommendation of the outreach folks as far as a lot of just in the wording. A lot of it was in just how to be straight and forward, short, precise, and forward on the wording, as well as a couple of pieces. So really, they felt that the work that you all did was actually really good. That was the initial feedback. But just, I guess, that was more editorial and more about just moving things around to make it look more, I don't want to say appealing, but I don't have a better word.
Okay, so just give everybody
Cosmetically.
a minute to read it,
Of course.
since it, not everybody has seen it yet.
Of course. And I guess my action, I would propose this. Again, this is only for suggestion. At the end of the day, this is all up to y'all, to the committee and how you want to move forward, or any input from your town. So I would suggest any updates or anything that you want to do is more than happy. If you want to mark it up and cross out or write into it, however is the easiest, we can. But I want to be clear is that, as my understanding is that we would give it to you all for mock-up. I'll mock up to you to comment on and aggregate. Did we get it to the point that it would be a final postcard, at which time that once everything else is set up and ready to go, the whole machinery around it, that the project would cover the cost and the mailing to get it out to a direct mail to the residents of both towns.
Okay. Thank you. And I have secured a QR code. So we can add the QR code to that. So, and actually, I think we can use this can we use this language as the basis for an article for the Register, which then goes into a little bit more detail about code projects?
I would think you could, the answer is yes. You could utilize this language as however you fit for purpose. Yeah. From the project as well.
It's just a good starting place to start to work from. So, okay.
Yeah. So that was it.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. So the postcard is with you all for additional comments, and then however you want to mark it up, and then to get it to a point of a final draft, then we could take it and make any additional changes that you want and get it back to you all as the final piece, pending release of all of these supporting activities for it.
Right,
Good. The second one I had update on is
So at either town hall, is that the info on the town halls will be in there, or they'll get it
They can fill out the survey live at the.
at the town hall? So are
If
we
they
gonna write the dates and times of the town hall in that, or would that be in the article?
well, it's.
Like it
just that
says at either town hall.
Right, that it
With
would
that-
be, a paper copy would be available.
I know, but I mean, instead of at either town hall, are there gonna be on that card, will it show the date and time at the town hall?
Like their open hours.
Like, is that a holding
Oh, I
spot,
see.
a holding place for the date and time of the town halls?
It can
it
be,
was a holding place for us, but if you could treat it as you want. Yeah.
and, you know, I think that's one of the things that the town halls have to decide that, you know, where they're gonna have it, how they're gonna be managed, are they gonna be collected and then somebody will drive in and pick them up, and then how do we enter that manually into Survey Monkey, because it usually only lets one survey per, thank you, that thing. Yeah, so that's a, you know, that's a confounding piece, and it may be that we need to tease the information out of Survey Monkey and then export it into an Excel file where we added the other stuff now.
You know, at the town hall, you could have, oh, but that would still be the same IP address. You could have people log in
Yeah,
and
so
do
there
it
must-
online
There
at
must
the
be a way to
computer.
do it, yeah.
Mm.
But that would still be coming from the same address. IP address.
Yeah, anyway, so that's a thing for us to figure out. And obviously that the towns have to,
Yeah, ask the staff at the town hall what would work best for them.
Right.
If they're willing to do.
you know, and at either town hall, like, it's like, let's see, there's nothing here that really says Goose Bay Harbor.
Well, I think,
So that would have to be clarified.
yeah, I think that would be something we would, if we want to meet with the town managers to kind of, in addition to what we were talking about, which I'll bring up in a minute.
Speak up. to the
Yeah,
mic.
that, you know, they get the town seat logos also on this maybe, and then also they can finalize what that
Should look
preference
like.
would be. Yeah, if they're agreeable to that, you know, but I think we should have the town, Booth Bay Harbor, on there.
Yeah, I mean, if it's gonna go at the town hall, we could put them up in these upper corners or something.
Right.
You know, where there's usable space and it won't make it too busy, but
Yeah, and there could be, I'm sure this is out there, where you can develop like a hard copy of a survey or something that then you could scan and it tabulates it, you know, from the scan somehow, I don't know. If you guys are gonna look into,
Yeah.
Yeah, we can have the
technology.
IT guy
Yeah.
at Bigelow, what he would suggest.
yeah, and I mean, I haven't looked at Survey Monkey. I just use it all electronically, but I'm sure there must be a way that you can, you know, I'm sure an administrator can add data.
Mhm.
Because we all fill it out from the same.
There's a way to
They're
do
Yes,
it.
yeah, I'm sure there's a way to do it. So, but the key is there a way to do it where you don't get one person who doesn't like any of it to do it 10 times? You know, that's the piece. You want to limit it to one person.
Well, you'd have to have somebody's name on it, right?
Yeah, but then anonymity.
Well,
could
I mean,
be
kind of like
important.
voting, if you just have the check, you know, you look up your name, you check it off, and then you can survey and, I mean, we'll know who's done it, maybe, I don't know.
Yeah,
I think it needs to be anonymous,
I
but
think it needs to be anonymous. I think a
who's
lot of
gonna
people.
do multiple surveys?
There are people that are pretty emotional.
Yes,
about all
I
of
would.
this.
But isn't there cameras at the town hall?
Yeah.
It's, I
Well,
mean,
that's true. I mean, if there's a way to do it, but my point is that if there's a way to do it so that let's say there's a device at the town
Right.
hall where someone can do it and the staff is watching.
Right.
But that doesn't mean someone in their own home can't do it
multiple times.
multiple
Do you
times.
think these things are that controversial that it have to be
These things
anonymous?
aren't that controversial. Accepting money from NEAP is controversial.
Right.
Oh, so just voting at all could be
So, yeah, that we, you know, people's other
People could
comments
just-
might be,
yeah.
and they want to
Okay.
stack the deck that
They don't
shouldn't
wanna-
accept any money
Okay,
from the
all right.
MEAB.
I see,
Communities
that makes sense.
shouldn't do this.
Right.
Even if the project is gonna happen regardless. And we really don't want to create something that becomes a forum for that, because that's
Right.
counterproductive to effective community function. So.
Right.
You know, it's much better to, have fewer people be able to respond, and people have to come in person to one of the meetings to voice what they need to voice. That's my opinion. So we should find out.
Yeah.
And then we can make a decision from there. All right, and Philip, you asked me for the survey, and I don't believe I got it to you.
That's, right.
Okay, I just don't, you know, yeah, too much stuff going on.
Can I
Yeah,
have one follow-up
perfect
question
lead.
on the anonymous issue? I mean, would people show up to vote if they didn't want people to know they were voting for something in person?
Well, but you're,
And they
but,
might
but
not,
you're, if you show up to vote, your ballot is anonymous.
right?
Nobody knows what you voted. It's secret ballot voting
Right.
in general. So, and if this goes to the town, then they'll be able to vote on it in secret.
I think having the survey filler outer hand their ballot, you know, fold it, hand it to the clerk.
If it's paper.
That kind of puts a little accountability on the voter to only show up once.
Yeah. Yes.
Other thing on the postcard, do we have a deadline for filling out the survey? We may want to add one.
Yeah,
We
so.
will want to have one, but we need to have our, you know, the communication has to happen before we know it.
Yeah, but we
Yeah.
could put a,
Should put a placeholder.
Yeah.
uh.
Okay.
All
All right. Great.
Comment. Want to put a comment on it?
The survey can be filled out until, you know, can be filled out
Where are you? Oh, online.
until X date.
Yeah, it's gonna fill out to the side, just say add deadline, add
There.
town logos, what else?
Oh.
Okay.
Logos. What else do people want?
I don't know about the logos. Isn't that sort of branded like the town initiative? And we're the ones driving it, not the towns necessarily, right?
Well, we can only drive the bus up to the point where we find out what the citizens want, and then it has to go to the town. NEAP will only
Yeah.
do this with an agreement with both towns.
Okay.
So,
So that was a discussion we were having last time too, about meeting with the town managers to give them a heads up what's coming. And then maybe give them the opportunity, you won't have to put it on the survey, I mean, on the postcard. But we do want people to know that the town is on board with what we're suggesting,
Yeah.
right?
or that they're the
That might-
vehicle, they're the vehicle for the citizens.
Yeah. Okay.
You know,
I see.
so, I mean, I'm not married to the idea of town logos one way or the other.
No, me neither, I just thought it would be,
I think your question for you all to decide is whether you think more people would fill it out because it's got that in
the town,
the imprimatur of the town
right?
Right.
than just a group of citizens.
Yeah.
And whether the towns are okay with that. So that's the other piece.
Okay.
You know, if it's just, and so I'm just gonna put a question mark there. So, you know, I think that's an important piece. If we said that this is a grassroots citizen group, and then once the citizens figure out what it is, then it goes to the town. That's very different than saying the towns have bought into this in the first place, particularly if we're dealing with people who get angry about this.
Yeah.
We don't want to backlash on the towns.
Right. And they might not want to weigh in until we get the survey information.
Right. So that's, we need a discussion with the town manager to see
Yeah.
what's
That's what-
their preference. And then see if we all agree with it.
I think that was something that was on Trish Warren's, she was gonna talk to Ms. Julio about it.
Yeah. But we didn't talk to Dan.
She couldn't make it to this meeting, she had to work tonight.
Yep. Okay,
I was thinking maybe it would be good to have a separate meeting with a few of the committee members, set it up with each of the town managers, or together or separately. To kind of have that conversation.
so I think it makes better sense, and this may not be, it may not be feasible, but to try and, bring it to the selectmen. Because the town managers carry out the work,
No, I know. But
and,
they-
and the selected men may want to have input. So they may have a different direction than what the town manager would be doing. So again, that's the thing, that we could go to the town manager first. You'd have to get it on the agenda in any case.
Right,
Um,
that's kind of where I was going, an informal discussion, and then they will know how to take it to the next level, or if there are, because we can't slap a logo, I'm guessing, just because the town manager says so. I think we're gonna have to go to the select board
And
anyway.
does everything the town manager do have to be approved by the select?
no,
No.
no, there's administrative rules that govern what the town manager does autonomously, and then
This
there's the
one's-
things that the select, it costs money, it has to go to the selectmen, but if it's already in the budget process, then there's some autonomy. So this is, this is something that is fiscal, so it has to go to the selectmen at some point. And the question is just at what point, whether this is it or whatever, and that, we can't answer that question, only the town manager is the person to give direction on.
Yeah, and the other thought was that they might have a different take on, maybe because we're finding out more details about some of the options we're having, that might stop it in its tracks. They might have another option to put on the matrix, or there might be another thing out there that, we haven't thought of.
Right.
They have the pulse on the towns and what town needs and community benefit, of those things, so. those
Yeah,
are
I mean,
some other
they
options.
may have a health and safety issue that we
Right.
haven't thought of,
That's right.
that's in their long-term planning, but may get bumped up if there were funding available.
Yeah.
Hi, Pauline.
Hello. Sorry I'm late.
Yeah, thanks for joining. So the three things were the postcard.
So that
The,
was number one, and then the second was the survey and the offer study. Just appreciate everyone's a lot going on, but if you supply it within a PDF or screenshots or however you could, I'll be more than happy to pass that on. It's just as we did with the postcard to our
Yeah.
outreach folks, with a focus of, again, just providing suggestions, on how that we might be able to be more apt to get people to respond and keep from that perspective for chances. But you get that to me, and I'll do what I can to keep that moving as well. I don't know about timing to turn it around. I guess it depends upon when I get it, but also this might take a little bit more than the postcard. I imagine be a little bit more in depth, but just I'll do what I can to move it as fast as possible.
I think the survey is relatively simple, and our goal is to keep it simple because we don't think people will answer complex questions.
Mhm.
And really, it's deciding what things are gonna go on it is one of the places where we need to find out, what CMP's thoughts were to go, are we gonna ditch electric altogether? And if the sewer is too expensive and too complicated, are we going to leave sewer to East Boothbay on there or have some other ask, such as ensuring that where the cable gets placed doesn't interfere with sewer expansion in the future, so that there's no conflict there, should we get funding to put the sewer in the next 10 to 20 years. So, that would be an ask. It's not a financial ask. But it's still an ask.
Okay, so if you, when I receive that, I'll move that for comment as well and do what I can to make sure it goes in a speedy manner.
Yeah.
I would imagine that before the next meeting that we would, depending on when I get it.
Yeah, that would be every intention of having it done well before the next meeting.
Perfect. We'll
Okay.
work towards that aim.
We'll just-
Okay.
Yeah.
The third one was the website. I think in the last meeting I shared my concern, about keeping arm's distance still. We can help facilitate. Well, this is your process
Yeah.
and set up. So, but Pauline was very convincing in our last discussion, and she wanted to make sure that I looked into it. So I can say that I still believe what I represented last meeting, that I would prefer to keep it at arm's length of this. But I did have some discussions internally, and there might be a way, if you all in a position that you couldn't, we might be able to find a way to support that, whether at a lower cost option, but make sure it's still fit for purpose, but we might be able to still help you achieve the same ends. But I don't know if there's any other discussions, or because I know some people are going to reach out to the towns. I didn't know, or I don't know how if there was any other updates on that.
Valerie said that, didn't the Booth Bay Harbor volunteer to host it? Or did I misunderstand?
No, I think it was that why didn't we post the information on the town's website? Because they have active websites, so to say you can access the meetings, recordings from here or the minutes from here or whatever, and have something on the town website. Which is doable. I mean, the first meetings were on the Booth Bay.
I think that makes the most
Website.
sense, right? Would they just be a mirror of each other? So there's just one website and so it's on both towns.
Well, that's a question that we would have to ask. The towns, the way it was before was just a little, there was a little place up in a corner. You had to know where it was. And I think that the big thing about a website is it's its own thing. And so there's no other conflicting things, and it's a little bit cleaner, I guess, for the person who goes looking. They don't get sidetracked by when the selectmen's meetings are, or the planning board's meetings are, or the comprehensive plan, which they have all that stuff on the front page. So, it could get lost very easily. So I'm just giving you pros and cons. I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other.
It sounds to me like maybe you already are going to be following up with either the town managers or something on the card and getting some comments. Maybe this is worth some feedback from the towns as whether they're not. And it could be done as, I'm not Johnny IT, but I do know that like it can, hosting, off of a sub host, if you will, it could be directly into that box, if you will, that material. You have to go through a lot of other windows. So I would ask, it might be worth a discussion. But I will also say that if it ends up that it's something that you can't sort out with the town or towns, I'm not sold it has to be two. I think it could still be one, but I think you need to discuss that with their folks. If you get in a position where that is not feasible, that we could readdress it with the project, and we might be able to help out in a means. May not be the exact way that you anticipated, but it would be the exact same purpose for it.
Yeah, so I mean, theoretically, either of the towns could host a separate page on their website so that you're just directing people to that page, whether it was from one town or the other, and both town logos could be on that page. And that could actually happen from anybody who has a website could add a separate page that may or may not be visible on their own website.
I think the main thing is that when you put in Booth Bay
Right,
community benefits, it takes you there, because isn't that how much we'll find it, right? They're not gonna know the
Exactly. Yeah.
link.
right.
It just has to be findable with search terms.
Yes, yes.
So my recommendation would be, as I said, check with each of the towns with the ITs, and if there's an avenue that might be a lot more straightforward and WR prep, but should you end up in a position where that's not viable, then I think I'm opening that door. I think we could find a way to help, and still be fit for purpose.
What about Bigelow? Did Valerie ask anybody about Bigelow paying $500 to host? Did she talk to you about that?
No. Is that what the towns are charging for a website to host it?
No,
But
that's what-
Colleen did a bunch of research and she found someone who would put the website together for us and manage it for 6 months for $500. And we were thinking that it's not a lot of money, I don't think. I mean, I'm honestly like ready to just throw it on the table to get it done. But I don't think I should. I think maybe big, be something that big.
Yeah. Yeah, again, I mean, we could do that. I don't.
So I
we
know,
could pay the $500, but I think it just makes more sense to have it in the town. And would the town host a separate webpage? That's, I don't think
They
so.
could have a link to it.
You
You
know,
know, I don't know. Would they want to have if every community, every group gets together and wants to post things on the town website, I could see them also having issue,
with
being like,
yeah.
ooh, I don't know. I don't really know.
Okay.
I think maybe the thing that says, this is a group and then it's like, I don't know. We have to ask them, but
you
I
got 2
think just
minutes,
having
Rob.
it done would be on a website where they could just, we could just change the address. It's already all set up and then that could be one less thing that needs to get done.
Again, the project would be happy to support, and if we could probably get you where you're the same point that you're looking for. I just think my suggestion only, would be that you're already dealing with, need to talk with the towns, a little bit, getting their feedback on that. They might have a great vehicle, they might be part of it, so that would only be my suggestion, so.
There was also the option of a Facebook group, a Facebook page,
Right, which is free,
and easier to spread.
right?
To use social media. Which is, it works well for the people who are under whatever age. I don't know, under 70.
Actually, I think it works for nobody under like 40 uses Facebook
Right.
anymore. I was finally proud that I knew what it was, and it was way past
But,
the time
yeah.
that my kids would dare look at. So,
But it's, yeah, I mean, it's easy enough to put it on Instagram. It's easy enough to put it, I'm not a Twitter person, but, there are other vehicles.
But I think social media can be kind of a dangerous place. I mean, I think it could be a great
Yeah.
tool. But I worry about, managing the comments and because
can't you post something and not allow comments?
You can.
So, I mean, if it's just an information page, I wouldn't allow comments.
I have a quick question, not
Yeah,
to.
you gotta go. I know you gotta
Well,
go.
this question's for Rob, actually. Sorry, 2 minutes. So I did check with CMP. I just had a question. Is Niev paying for infrastructure upgrades at the substation in Newfane Harbor?
So we are active in the study process through ISO New England, which manages the grid, in which CMP is a part of that study process. And it's a kind of a lengthy process, and we're about 1.5 years into that. And so we will be studied about and make sure that there's no negative impact in the integrity of the grid. There's reliability standards that need to be upheld. So they will study us against any different types of faults or anything else that goes into the system to make sure that we're not impeding the integrity of the grid, right? So if they come on and say, well, listen, you need to replace this switch or do something different to do it in a manner that maintains the integrity, the project will have to pay for it.
Okay.
So hopefully I'm answering your question. So about CMP doing something extra for the process for the integrity of the grid or reliability would mean that they'd have to admit that their requirements are somehow less than adequate, which I think would be hard to get them to admit to. So I don't know if I'm answering your question.
Not really.
I
So
thought you did, and then you Then I was
change-
confused.
Right, so, and are you anticipating that CMP is gonna need to upgrade parts and pieces of the substation based on the energy, what the
Coming in.
cable's coming ashore and bringing on shore?
There
Does it
will,
have capacity right
the
now?
answer is yes. The answer is yes, and the product would have to pay for it. Yes.
You are, yeah, so the
Okay.
project will pay for upgrades, is going to pay for upgrades to the substation if they're necessary.
Very much so.
If
Yes.
they're necessary for the project.
Okay, that's,
Okay.
and you anticipate that that may have to happen.
There
Yeah.
will have to be some changes to that substation to allow us to interconnect.
Okay,
When you say, I'm not sure if I'm meeting your definition of upgrades, but you need to put some components in the substation to allow for the interconnection. And
Okay.
that cost will be borne by the project.
Okay. That answers it.
happy anniversary.
Okay, thank you. So, all right, Philip, we could, as always, touch base after. And thank you all very much. Have a safe evening. Okay.
Okay, yeah.
I,
Thanks, Rob.
So that's a nice lead in. Allison, would you like to tell us what?
Yeah, so I had a conversation with the director of licensing for CMP, and I asked about the different things that we're trying to do with the matrix, which would be burying the lines and then also upgrades to the substation. And I think the easy answer, the upgrades to the substation, well, that's actually a longer answer. Let's talk about the burying the wires. So he basically gave me just some general numbers. He wasn't willing to give me, actual numbers, but he did say I should put a narrative together with some aerials to see exactly where the length of the lines we're talking about, whether they're transmission or distribution lines matters. And I think these are transmission lines. He seemed to think that they were just distribution lines, but because it's the three on top that go.
It's because it's
yeah.
3-phase.
Mhm. So,
For Washburn and for.
Yeah.
You guys have 3-phase. You have
Okay.
3-phase too.
yeah, okay, right. So, basically he said that just for general numbers, it's almost up to 3 to 8 times more costly to drop the lines underground as it is to put them in the air. But he couldn't say, but that's from like the starting point.
Right.
The difference would be that they're already existing and what would it take? Then I talked to him about the fact that, they're already bringing the cable ashore and that it would just be basically,
It's already a
because he said most of the cost is from installation and materials of construction for the most part. That's where all the cost comes from. And so looking at it in terms of the fact that the trench is already gonna come ashore and be dug, gives a little bit of, difference there than what a normal project would be. So he basically said, put together, there's other cables that you have to consider too. And that was something that, what about the telephone and cables? Are we thinking of dropping those as well? And so with any of those cables, there has to be, because there's so much voltage going through any cables like that, there has to be a certain distance apart, at least 5 feet, and then there also has to be insulation, and so all of that.
5 feet from other cables.
From, say, for example,
From the
a
water.
cable that's coming in versus a cable that's going out.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
so there's some of that, and he wasn't sure, those are just generalities he's
Yeah,
telling me about, so. So yeah, he basically said, put together a narrative, what you want to do, what questions you have, and aerial views of, and he will get it to the right, another engineer, distribution engineer, basically, in this area, to be able to talk about cost. I said, well, I gave him a little lowdown that he was willing to give us up to $1 million to do this, and he basically, I was like, have you ever heard of anyone doing this, first of all? Like dropping lines after they've been,
Right.
he's like, honestly, no.
Okay. Yeah,
He said he's
new
usually,
construction.
exactly. But he said, it's not unheard, he's like, I'm at the upper echelons of things. It could be, I can spread this around and see who has maybe encountered this before, and we can get you at least some numbers, and see. So, yeah, he was talking just, and what the sequencing would be, like when it could happen, how quickly it could happen, and how much it would cost, something like that for that stretch. And I guess I wasn't sure how to describe from the substation to Bigelow, we need more specifics about.
And we don't have that yet.
Right. And I told him that. I told him this was just sort of looking into if this is even.
Feasible.
Right. So, yeah, distribution, okay, so I have scratchy notes here. So the other thing I brought up was the improvements to infrastructure, and he said that anyone who's tapping into or connecting to any infrastructure upgrades are usually paid for by that project or that's coming into the substation. And so that's why I had that question for Rob, because if he's already doing infrastructure upgrades for a wind turbine, I'm guessing that there may be equivalent or we don't know what that is, you know what I mean? We're not sure how much they're gonna pay for that and what that is exactly.
Yeah, or what they're gonna do.
Right. And so clearly they're still in the planning phases as well on that. And it really depends on, and then I said, well, has anyone ever come to you guys about just as a town looking to upgrade a substation for future development? And he said, well, that's when he said, normally anyone connecting to the substation pays for it, and towns usually have other people do it, or, other developers. No one's ever come to us and said they want the substation upgraded for future development. I was like, wow, we're hitting all sorts of new boxes here.
Hey, it's the birthplace of offshore wind in
Right.
Maine. Of course, all this is gonna be.
Right. And so he basically said, anything that, there is a mid-coast planning group, a planning department at CMP that looks at 5 and 10 year, upgrades basically, and prioritizes based on load growth. They look at different statistics, intensity of growth, loading, all of that, and then they make recommendations. And so there is a current area study that's been done, and I asked him to send me the links to see where we, because I kind of described Bouvet Harbor, how we explode in the summertime, but that, we would like to see there is a lot of potential future development happening down here, and it would be great if we could actually look into providing some of that, maybe using some of this money to prepare for that. And then he said that there is a cap. Okay, so once a planning study goes into place and they prioritize what areas maybe need the upgrades within the next 5 to 10 years. Once it gets to it, he didn't know the exact monetary amount, but once it's over $1 million, these upgrades, which he seemed to think that substation upgrade could cost 1 million, but he didn't say that that was completely, like 1 million was out of the realm of doing something like this. But he did say once it hits this money mark, the PUC gets involved and they have to actually do the approval. And he called it certificate of public utility. And that takes about 9 months to a year to get. And it's based on dollar amounts and percents of thresholds. So if the project's big enough and the infrastructure, and I'm hoping I'm conveying this accurately, but we can get more information if we want, if we need it. He was willing to talk to me more. Then it has to go through a permitting process and another level of approvals for something like that, which makes sense. You know what I mean? If you're talking about upgrading a substation. And he talked about this one being not radial, but a distribution substation versus there's different substations, and I didn't write it down, but this is a smaller substation compared to some other bigger ones, and just by the size of it, you can tell that as well.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I missed some of these meetings that have there been developers that were not able to move ahead in something that the town wanted because the substation wasn't big enough? Like, is this why? Is
Okay,
this
so
how
this
it
came
ended
up-
on?
Nope, this came up because in the first beginnings of the meetings, we talked about how as development occurs, we'll be at risk for more and more brownouts. And the fact that if we can develop our infrastructure so that not only does it, address future development, but it also, alleviates the usage, the brownouts, anything to do with, you know, more people being on the peninsulas. The town, I think it was, I don't know whose hat Dan was wearing, but he was
Yeah.
talking about that. For him as a town manager was something that he looks at in the future.
And he didn't think that was something that future developers would cover, like,
Well, right, because they'd have to pay for it if they, but I'm not thinking someone like, you know, a business. Their usage, they're paying CMP, but they're not necessarily, they're not hooking into the substation and like upgrading those things. So that's, I think that was the thought is, how do we prepare for future businesses and future needs with the population growth and potential businesses that are coming down the peninsula? And, you know, as you hear more and more about brownouts, you know, people using air conditioning, you know what climate change is gonna bring,
Yeah.
so there'll be more energy usage, period.
And that's one of the reasons why they've
Yeah.
had a push to have the solar in town, was because the lines can only bring so much down, so then you're generating some of the power
Yeah.
locally, which is why we started asking the questions of where will this power go? Is it gonna be, you know, is it gonna get distributed on the peninsula once it comes to the substation?
Yeah.
Or is it gonna get shunted somewhere else to service someone else? So, you know, that's an important piece of it as well. And from a PR standpoint, if we can say that it comes into the substation and increases the capacity for the peninsula, that will be a huge PR boost for,
Right.
you know, whether people like or don't
Encouraging
like
it.
the project. If it's gonna be there, to be able to say that the power stays on the peninsula.
Okay.
yeah, the way it was described to me is that to think of the grid almost like a bathtub that lots of things will feed into and everything then gets pulled out of it, but it's not localized like that. So.
Yeah, but if the substation is the bathtub.
If the, but, right. the
And there's
substation
enough
has a
of a
maximum.
draw on the peninsula, is more of it gonna get?
So
shunted
if
out
the
of town?
substation were bigger, could more of it stay?
Stay
Is
here.
that the, okay,
Yes.
sorry, I'm
Yes.
getting
Yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah. Well, the bigger the
Getting there.
substation, let's call it a battery. If you look at it, think
Okay.
of it as like batteries that stores or whatever, or distributes. If you have a bigger battery, you can distribute more in the local, you know.
So one, and I just know enough to be dangerous on this. One of the questions that I asked is from the single turbine, the energy it generates is gonna be expensive energy. And but I can't remember what the numbers, I had notes on it. When it's adding a few drops of very expensive energy into the bathtub,
Into the pool.
it's not gonna change the overall cost of the bathtub, but so one concern would be if we did keep it,
Does it
Are-
increase?
Does it
are we
Right.
keeping the very
Yeah.
expensive stuff instead of diluting it in the big bathtub? And
Which-
which
which-
kind of normalizes the cost, because it's
For-
such a tiny amount of energy.
Which would be a good question for this guy, for CMP, because if we create more ability, if we upgrade the infrastructure, can we dilute it more and keep it, you know what I mean, like that, I wonder if it works like that, the energy, you know, if we are gonna be accepting the more expensive energy.
Yeah, so if we could keep it, then a conversation with New England Aqua Ventus, I don't know if you could speak to this at all, should be what they charge for that. Could they work a deal with the town to not charge us?
That extra overhead, yeah. So the last thing that he mentioned, so these are all good questions, and I think we need to follow up with this. The last thing was, wow, does it seem to be getting more?
No, we've been here longer.
So he talked about the fact that this was probably radial feed energy coming in one direction and not a loop feed to East Loop Bank. So if we bury the lines, you know, if it gets shut, you're gonna lose everything anyway from that point forward, instead of like a loop feed where it would be localized. And he said that burying the lines for the purpose of preventing outages, it's kind of a moot point. Like, for example, it won't help, basically, is what he said.
But that's a big point.
It will, right, it would you bury the line, but if it goes out
Out on funny
before,
cabin,
right,
it's
before
not gonna
it's
change
buried,
it.
it's not gonna help us in any way,
Got
right? And I was like, well, we're on a peninsula, so yeah, I get that. That's kind of like counterintuitive. He said, so anyway, it's something to think about.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, some of this is for aesthetics, you come into the village and you don't want to see, these lines are just everywhere. It would be nice to not have
Yeah.
those lines there. And the fact that we want to prevent more outages because it's windy on the peninsula. We have
Right.
winds like no one else, I feel like, other than, we're different like that, I feel like, as you cross Mill Pond and go out to the peninsula. There's some wind exchanges happening there. So anyway, that was another thing, just practical thing to think about, you know what I mean?
Well, if you're not getting real value for
Yeah.
it, then, even if it's very feasible, it doesn't rise
And looks nice.
to the top,
Right.
to the top of the list of things to take priority.
Right, so I said I would get back to him, once I just, talked about this with the group. And, we could get pricing for this, for dropping the line, and he seemed to think it would fall in the 1 million price tag. So if we wanted to do that.
Right, but if we were gonna grade everything on their health and safety
Yeah.
value.
Right.
Like if, which ones really hit the mark for health and safety. I would go for traffic safety, I would go for water, I would go for potentially I can't remember what they said at the school, but some of the infrastructure at the school that directly affects health and safety. Things that are just very concrete and would impact the most citizens in the community. So that's just my thought.
I think we'll leave it up to the survey. Right?
Yeah,
But I think do you want me to investigate this, and do we want to keep it on the matrix, I guess, do we think this is worth keeping?
right.
Or do we need more information? And do we feel comfortable deciding this on our own?
Well, so, one of the questions is, are we providing a curated list for the public? Because we've done the background research. So do we decide that some things are unlikely to happen? And if everybody voted for it, they're still unlikely to happen. So we take that off the list because we don't want to box ourselves into a corner that's not gonna work. Sewer comes under that category. If the timing is just not right for a multitude of reasons, the cost is much more than $1 million. The complexity is high, so we're checking all the boxes that go, oh, maybe we shouldn't have that on there. But maybe our sewer ask, like I said, is an ask, it's not a fiscal ask, but it's a project ask. Does that need to go on the matrix, or is it something that we as a group just go, no, we're gonna put this in the ask? Shouldn't need
And the
a bigger
project
vote.
ask is to make sure that we know we can do it later.
Yes, I think
Okay.
so.
Yeah, which to me is it's a very reasonable ask. Particularly since sewer probably has to go underneath. So, the complexity of putting in sewer later, we don't want it to rise so much that then it becomes impossible when there's the public will to do it.
Yeah, and Jerry did mention that, the infrastructure upgrade, if you want, like, that is complicated. Yeah, basically, so if that wasn't conveyed, he said, if even touching infrastructure upgrades,
And that's of the substation.
of the substation here would be complicated because it would
Right.
likely go exceed the 1 million, and then you get into the PUC territory, and then you get into prioritizing, and then all this other stuff, so it would be nice, but bigger project for a bigger group.
Right. And so, this is where as a citizen group, I think that it's reasonable for us to say, do we want to have those things on the matrix? If they're not really feasible, if they're, that's why we're doing this work. So that you give people the things that are actually doable.
So do you want me to investigate varying the lines?
So,
Well, I was, sorry.
Go ahead.
I think if you make a decision without showing people why you make the decision, I think that's not a good idea. If this is gonna be more than $1 million, then you can tell the public, you can show the public it's more than $1 million. And that's what we've been given. But I think if you just cut it off and not show people why it's been cut off, I think people rather know, oh yeah, that's like 1.75 million. That doesn't fall in that budget. But I think if you just remove it because you think it doesn't fall in the budget and you're afraid that people are going to question it, I think that could be a mistake. That's just my 2 cents.
Yep.
Would this
Appreciate
fall
it.
into the infrastructure improvements that we might be able to get federal dollars for?
I mean, I think it all depends on, like, I think there's a structure of how this gets done, and unless you come up with your own money to do it, I don't think you can bypass. CMP makes the decision to do those things, and then if you have the money to go ahead, you have to go to the PUC. You would probably, in concert with CMP, but you'd be supplying all the money to do it. You know what I'm
Okay, so
saying?
then, yeah, so
Yeah.
then because it's a company,
Yes,
so then.
Right, as
federal
opposed to the
dollars.
water
Okay,
district
yeah,
or the sewer district.
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Who could, they're quasi municipal, so they are. So I think, to your point, Pauline, I think then that the matrix needs to highlight the complexity of the project, the overall feasibility of it, the cost. And I think it would be fair to say whether it was recommended or not recommended by the citizen group who's done the background work. I mean, when you have the voting at the town, it says whether the selectmen recommended or not. Of course, they only put things on there that they do recommend, but, if we want that transparent process, I think it is fine on the matrix, not in the survey, but on the matrix to say, the citizen group thinks that this is not a top priority for the following reasons. So you don't have to say that you don't recommend it, but you could say, or you could just have a list of pros and cons. So that people actually have the information. Because if, we can't put all this information, we need to have something that is very succinct. And, the general rule for materials that go to the public are to keep it between 5th and 8th grade reading level. So, that's the reality of what we need to try and do with the matrix. And it's not that you want to be, I'm going to rephrase it. It's that you want it to be very clear to the majority of the people. And so for some people, it may be simplistic language, and then they can dive deeper on the other pages. But for the average person, they just want to understand what the hell you're asking. And that's it. They don't necessarily want anything further.
I mean, I guess there could be an area on the matrix where the question is asked, like for every person who's been to these meetings, what would you do and why, what would you not choose and why? I mean, it could be something that's another piece.
Well, I mean, I think pros and cons makes it easy, and we'll all be able to pick up. Those of us who are for it will have the pros, and those of us who don't think it's good will have the cons. And so that way, you still get all.
That does make it simple. And one of the cons could be, we'd have to come up with X number of dollars.
Yeah.
Have to come up with X number of dollars, have to go through the PUC process, whatever it is. Like there might be cons for the road stuff. So that some of the places the right of way is not wide enough to put a bike path, sidewalk bike path. That's just a reality. That's a con to this piece of the project. And whether you like it or not, doesn't change the fact that that exists. It's not, it's all fact-based. Because that's where the rubber meets the road. It makes it hard to decide, and that's why we want it to go to the citizens. So they can state their priorities, and they may have something else. They may say, we want the money to go, I'm thinking outside the box here about everything we've talked about, but to the community health center. They may say, we want some funds to go to the community health center to pay for indigent care. You know, we want funds to go to, I don't know, that was just an easy one, to the school to ensure that whatever the current problems are, that this particular one has been addressed. So, you know, people may have,
I think we should
So
add,
how do those get onto the matrix then, for them to be?
with the survey has another, you know, an open-ended question so people can make suggestions.
well, why, what, but, yeah, but
But I mean, is that gonna be like a write-in candidate in an election? You can.
that's why I'm saying,
Yeah.
I feel like we need to cast a wider net with some of our choices for the matrix, but also see if we're missing anything, because there could be one or two other options that could be on the
Yeah.
matrix that we
Right.
should.
It could fund the
Investigate.
visiting nurse, and then thinking health and safety.
And I don't want to prolong this.
Yeah, no,
But
I
at
don't
the same
either,
time, I
but
feel like we should maybe go to a wider group, but a small group, like the town managers, maybe.
I mean, one of the
Selectmen or the selectmen, to see, hey,
Yeah.
what are we missing? Is there anything we're missing that might be a really good
Yeah.
option here?
community health center, ambulance
Community
service.
health center, the police. Oh, well, that's a big one. But
Mm.
the community health center, I think I brought that up a while back, but I think that, you know, elder care in the peninsula lacks. And I think through the community center, there could be a lot of money. They could do a lot with that money.
Yeah,
Let's just
and
say
there's
that.
the community health center, and then there's the community. center.
Right, all
So,
those.
you
$1
know,
million isn't a lot for a road construction project, but it is a lot personally.
Yeah.
right,
Yeah.
right.
I mean, we didn't even consider that, honestly. I think we need to think about that.
So, okay, so we could go, I'm just gonna, and we're at time, I just wanna be,
You know, those are so much similar though,
Yeah.
right? Like
We are.
that's. Cause I'm,
thank
thank you for doing all that research, but I
Yeah.
have no idea really what you're.
yeah, I
Like,
have
I think
no
that
idea
would
what
be really
they-
hard to make that simple in like 4 lines.
Right.
That somebody would read on a survey.
It's complicated and it's sort of a, yeah,
It's such a great dream though.
it would be.
Yeah,
I mean,
power
even if
line.
you just infrastructure, development
Yeah.
infrastructure and just,
Oh,
that would be
yeah,
really
I'm
great.
not gonna
to do.
share, 'cause I have
We
to
would
find it.
have to cut down our beech tree eventually.
I know that.
We have to trim it right now before.
So
season
I'll
gets
be
there.
hanging out on that tree.
So,
That'll be a sad day.
community,
It's already late.
We're gonna wrap it.
what would you call a community, just community groups? I mean, just a placeholder for us?
Community
Yeah.
services.
Okay.
Yeah.
Community, health or safety services, right?
Yeah, because it could be, you know, Nell was talking about how we don't have a police in Booth Bay.
In Booth Bay.
Right, in
In
Booth Bay.
The
in
town of
general.
Booth Bay does not have police.
And so the Lincoln County has to come to East Booth Bay or Bardas Island.
Oh, yeah.
Right, yeah.
So maybe you could use $1 million to fund a shared position between the towns. You know, so that you got police in.
I don't, yeah.
Yeah, so the
Yeah.
only, the one thing, like when we get a grant.
Yeah.
At Bigelow. We try to know whether it's gonna be recurring money
Yeah,
or not. If it's
understood.
not recurring money, we're
Right,
trying not to put it towards something that will have recurring costs.
right,
Because otherwise it gets very ugly when it goes away.
right.
Yep.
Right, the sustainability piece. is
You know, and $1
big.
million, and what would that be? That maybe 5 years of a police officer? When you, with everything wrapped up,
Mm.
salary, fringe benefits, whatever the overhead, the town, I don't know what.
It could be turned into an endowment, it could be invested and only the earnings get spent, get granted. out.
50K a year is what $1 million would be.
And it
Yeah.
would be, it could be permanent 50K
So,
for
so
somebody
we
to
did have
decide who to-
discussion about a community fund,
Mhm.
and the challenges of having, hosting, distributing
Mhm.
such a thing.
Mhm.
So,
Maine Community Foundation can cover a lot of the service for you, but at an expense probably.
Right, yes. Yeah. Okay, well, you know, this is a complex thing. We knew it. And we're finding out how complex.
Seems more complex.
Yeah.
I may have missed this, but can we invest? Can we invest the money? I mean, can we take it and put it into a fund and just live off the interest?
Yeah,
I
that's
think
what
that's very optimistic. I don't know. I refuse to look at my retirement savings right now that
Yeah.
are invested.
Right, right.
risky.
And it's very risky.
Well, I mean, these
Rob
Is-
suggested that that was not the intent
Yeah.
and really wanted to see it be concrete projects. So that was, he was fairly clear about that at the meeting where we talked about it. I remember. Yeah.
just the eternal optimist, just the
Yeah,
eternal.
yeah, I know. I'm glad. We need that. Okay.
What about getting this article? Can you just talk about that real quick?
Yep.
I think that Trish Warren called me this week because someone had come up to her asking her about this project. They were really upset that the town had accepted $1 million from the EV. They couldn't believe that they would take that money because I don't know, you know, who knows where they were coming from with it. But, and you know, that the town, nobody had any say, you know, so there's a lot of rumors going on right now about what we're doing. And I think it's really important to get something into the paper as soon as possible. And so and it sounds like the Register, they don't have enough writers to actually write an article. So we were, before you came in, we were talking about how you're a great
Oh, yeah,
writer.
they'll publish anything as long as it,
They don't write it.
is about the like Windjammer days.
Oh. But I don't know
Yeah.
if that's something that, I mean, there's a lot of stuff's written, I think. I mean, there's a lot of, you know, who the group is, you know, the first meeting, there's a lot, you know, in the notes that a lot of that could be repurposed.
Yeah.
I don't know if,
Well, so I think we're gonna need a couple different articles. One just about the group and what the work is.
Yeah.
The others was the suggestion was to put it in the what's happening, so that we're inviting more people to come to the meeting. And then have another article about the potential benefits once we get through this process. So we can tell people that we're in this process, they're welcome to join. But, you know, it's not, you can't talk. It's hard to talk about what's gonna be on the matrix until we finish the process. And I mean, we could say that these are the things that have been under discussion without going any further.
Philip, is this something you could do a first draft that then the committee edits?
I'd be happy to if you want me to.
I mean,
I was
'cause
gonna
you
say-
write,
I was gonna
write.
say you
but-
or their outreach group. I mean, they know we could give them all the information to put something together.
I think NIAB's interest in getting information out is to avoid the rumor mill.
Right.
You know,
Right.
what's happening. My very first conversation with Trish way back when was when the whole idea that there might be a community benefit agreement, which is in the legislation. And so this is not, you know, this is required for, you know, for health and to, you know, to offset health and safety concerns or what have you. And Trish said, well, the fisherman I've been talking to said, you wouldn't take a bribe, would you? Yeah, I mean,
And
so I think
that's how they feel.
that's how, yeah, so having
When you
some
clarify.
information about what this group is doing is, I think,
Yeah.
in the interest.
And a link to the legislation itself would be useful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For those of us who are used to reading legislation. And for people to see that it's not coming from now. Because that makes a difference.
Yeah.
And there's other people who won't make a difference.
I just have to get permission to do that, but
Yeah.
I'm.
Is that what
happy
you
to
guys,
take-
you want NIA's representative to write it, or would you rather it be?
Well, they would only write a draft,
I
that we
would
would
say-
then go.
Yeah, I
Right,
don't
it's
know
just
about
doing
you,
a-
but I could
it's a-
edit the heck out of something, but it is horrible laying the first words on the page. It's
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
You know, we have a
or do
description
you
of
want
the
to, would
group.
you want to just take it from the start? And I realize that is how I just said that.
You know, we have a description of the group in the minutes in the beginning. We have the description.
We have the words
that's
on that
the
card.
postcard.
Yeah.
We have the
that
management.
Oh,
Yeah.
great.
Great. I mean, I think
it
Rob
makes
would be way more comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
keep
would
that in
too.
mind, please.
It's our thing.
Yeah, it's just, yeah, who would do it? But thank you, Dana, for covering.
No, thank you.
I appreciate
That is great. Yeah.
That wasn't all self-serving. I really didn't care about you as a person, but I knew you're really busy.
All right. So, any other
I
comments?
said that sort of as a joke and it came out really awful.
Because we're past time. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. Thanks. So going once, going twice, anything else? I'm gonna stop the recording.
October 20th.
Bye, Pauline. I
next
know I
meeting.
owe you answers to a bunch of emails. I'll get.
Lights out.
Sorry, they're not coming back on either.
Did you shut those lights off on purpose? I see you.
We'll be in
Bye, everybody.
Utah, I think.
So
Okay.
I-
So